Hey everyone, this is Dominick from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel doing another guest review for Organic Price Books. And today we're taking a look at a DC Omnibus. Of course, I'm talking about The Flash by Waid Omnibus Volume 1. This collection was released in the last year or so, and it was one I really wanted to check out, so I was really thankful for the opportunity. As far as what it includes, this collection has issues written by Mark Waid primarily, and illustrated mostly by Greg LaRocque and Mike Wieringo. The comics that are collected in this edition were published by DC Comics beginning all the way back in 1990. The volume itself collects The Flash, issues 62 through 91, The Flash Annual, issues 4 through 6, Green Lantern, issues 30, 31, and 40, The Flash Special, issue 1, and Justice League Quarterly, issue 10. This is a 1,084-paged, oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock. And before we do a quick overview of the contents of this book, I do want to just showcase different aspects of the dust jacket. I will show you the under the dust jacket artwork they printed on this book, as well as the binding you can expect from this omnibus. I do love the spine on this edition. Of course, it's the Flash, so it's going to be red, yellow, and white, but I think it just looks really crisp on the bookcase. Love the font they've chosen. Everything's nice and big and readable. A really nice touch here. I think the back cover as well was chosen really nicely. It gives you a good idea of what you can expect on the inside of the book itself. And after we're done looking at that, I'll go ahead and switch to another view. I'll show you, again, this dust jacket in full, along with the interior flaps of that dust jacket, before transitioning over into the under the dust jacket artwork they printed for this book. Again, a really nice dust jacket. That red and yellow that I, of course, had to expect for a Flash book is just really poppy and eye-catching. I think they did a really fantastic job. No real complaints for me overall. But I do have to say, the under the dust jacket artwork they printed on this hardback just brings it to a whole nother level. I really love the scene they chose for that under the dust jacket print. It is a Wally West Flash versus Reverse Flash. And it's just pretty stunning and really well replicated for the actual hardback itself. It is meant to be a wraparound image, however the middle is obscured based on the spine design, which is also stamped on that under the dust jacket hardback itself. I do like seeing the spine details replicated, but it is hard to not see a full wraparound image on the hardback, but it's still very vibrant and just an incredible print. As far as the binding for this hardcover goes, there's definitely some glue in this binding by the look of it, but I can't tell if it's also sewn with glue. I think that might be the case here. At any rate, I found it to be really well bound. I had zero complaints reading through it myself. Would recommend. Okay, and now that we've gotten the exteriors and all the mechanics out of the way, we can jump into the book itself, and I have to say, this was a really great omnibus. Admittedly, I am a huge Jeff Johns Flash Run fan, but I knew that Mark Waid was an absolute heavy hitter in the world of Flash comics. I had just dabbled with issues from him before. This was my first attempt to really begin his run in earnest. And overall, I was really happy with what I saw in this collection. I've heard people say that his run just continues to grow in quality, but I found what I've read in these initial issues to still be really fun. Right from the jump, if you aren't aware, this is a Wally West Flash book, a Wally West Flash run, so if you're expecting to see predominantly Barry Allen, I would definitely recommend you look elsewhere. That being said, this is one of the most striking incarnations of the Flash I have ever read. I felt like I got to know the character of Wally West more through the pages of this single omnibus than just about any other collection of Wally West books I have read in the past, and that's really saying something, particularly from such a huge Jeff Johns Flash Run fan. At any rate, the early arcs of the book have a couple Flash specials before proceeding into really the main first story arc from Mark Waid, and that really does a retelling of the Wally West Flash origin story. Wally West is a character who has been around in comics for some time, between having his origins when Barry Allen is the main Flash and he gets his powers and it goes by the moniker Kid Flash. He's also seen in the pages of Teen Titans before he ascends to the mantle of the Flash himself after the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But this is a fantastic place to jump on board with the character, like like I said, one of the earliest story arcs is a retelling of Wally West's origins, so you really feel like you get brought up to speed on who this character is, where he came from, some of the most meaningful relationships in his life, and kind of why he is the hero he is. After that, we spin out into a bunch of different story arcs. We have a great one with Aquaman that I found to be really fun. We have another one that's a crossover storyline with Hal Jordan Green Lantern. That was a particular note to me because I know Hal Jordan Green Lantern is best friends with Barry Allen's Flash, but I wasn't sure what the dynamic was in the comics between Hal Jordan and Wally West, of course Barry Allen's protege, so I found that kind of dynamic pretty enlightening. The crossover was a ton of fun, visiting Gorilla Grodd and Gorilla City. And I really just think that that can be a defining way to describe this omnibus, is that it's a ton of fun. These comics all came out in the early 90s, and that's a period of comic book history I have not really delved into much on the DC side of the fence. So for me, I found a lot to love in this run. I do think, again, it excels at really showcasing Wally West as a person. I found him to be a lot more believable, and he just felt like a real person. He was not perfect. There were things that irritated him. He would sometimes get moody or become kind of a show-off, and for whatever reason, I found that character so much more gripping. I felt like I got a sense for his personality, and it made just about any of his adventures he got in throughout this book that much more engaging because I was absolutely rooted in his character. While I do love the Jeff Johns Flash run, I almost feel like he prioritizes characterizing the villains even more so than the primary hero. Of course, we get incredible moments with his Wally West Flash, but I really feel like he does more service to a lot of the iconic Rogues villains of characters. So far, what I'm reading of Mark Waid's run, I think it might be a definitive character-defining run for Wally West himself. This is one of the best character studies I've seen on this character in all of the years I've read him, and I'm really enjoying it. I definitely see why this is a really celebrated run. As far as the quality of the different story arcs in this book, obviously, that's a subjective opinion. It'll vary a lot from person to person. If you're asking my opinions, though, I would say that there were a handful of very strong storylines that absolutely hold up. I was gripped. I had to turn page to page and just burn through the story arcs. And there were others that I just kind of felt hit or miss with. There were some that were definitely not as good as others, some that might have felt a little bit like filler. But there was never ones that I thought they were just absolutely awful issues. Minimally, everything was definitely entertaining for me, and I know that overall, when you read this book as a whole, it's definitely more of a win than a loss on my end. Like I said, some incredible Flash moments, particularly in the world of Wally West. As far as the art quality in this book goes, for me, I thought it was always pretty solid. I know LaRocque and Waringo were the primary illustrators or pencilers on this title, but it definitely changed hands a few times. There were quite a few other pencilers throughout this book, so you get a varied sense of styles. I would say overall, there were a lot more kind of cartoony, more animated looking designs, especially once we got to the Waringo era of this book. It's a lot more like rounded, softer edges. I maybe didn't like that style that much, but that being said, I actually thought it still fit the world of Flash pretty perfectly. We have a lot of great action sequences and splash pages throughout this entire run we have in the book. They do experiment a little bit with panel layout, and that's always fun to see. I know we're approaching like mid-90s comics, and I know eventually once people like Todd McFarlane really start to just change the game, I know panel layouts were never really the same, but we can still see a lot of just exploration of the form in this omnibus. I think this was such an interesting time in comic book history, and I think that this is really a great run. I see why it's so celebrated again, and I'm only reading this volume 1. I'm sure the Mark Waid era Flash, if they continue to do this omnibus line, will probably end up with at least 3 books, I would assume, but we'll see. I know they also released, I think, 8 of these trade paperback collections. I had one of those myself before updating to this omnibus format, and wow, seeing everything like this in an oversized format is really the way to go if you can with your budget. It is really just something to behold. I love seeing the sense of motion conveyed in all of these issues, especially with a character like Flash. I really think think the art can make or break it, and I think that so many of these artists had such a deft hand at just creating that sense of momentum and motion, and it was just fun to read. I do think that we get to see a lot of great villains. Some are just frequent from his rogues gallery, and some are just totally brand new within this book. As far as his supporting cast, I love seeing his relationship bloom with Linda Park, as well as seeing his dynamic with the Pied Piper, his friend Chunk, and of course all of the other speedsters that like to grace the pages of this Mark Waid run, and there are many. And that really covers our brief overview of this omnibus. I am sad to say there were really no extras at the back of this book. There was maybe a sketch and a little thing about the different creators, but I was hoping to see even more sketches, maybe a variant cover art gallery, or some form of extras. I know with how historic this run was, I think I was just expecting to see more in the extras department. Otherwise, a fantastic addition here. Loved this omnibus, such a fun read. If you're interested in picking up your own copy, please check out Organic Priced Books, and if you want more reviews from me, Dominick, you can check out my channel, The Comic Book Report. Thank you so much, and have a good one.